What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me. It's that time again. It's time to adjust the chain on the Vitpilen 401. So I thought I'd bring you guys along with me to do that. I think this is my fourth or fifth time adjusting this chain. I'm actually getting ready to go to a lightweight sprocket, change to a different chain anyway. So I wanted to make just a real quick video for those of you who are having chain issues, having to constantly adjust the chain. I think I have about 4,500 miles on the Vitpilen, and I've had it for a little over a year now. Again, this is my fourth or fifth time having to adjust this chain, so I'm getting ready to just go to a different setup. I'll probably hit up Formula 390 to get me a lightweight sprocket, stuff like that. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into it and adjust this chain. Okay, I've already got the bike on the stands. I use bobbins on mine. Bobbins are these. If you use a different type of stand that doesn't need bobbins, that just supports the bike from the swing arm, that's totally fine too. But I find bobbins to be easier for me, so that's what I use. Of course, FYI, when you measure your chain tension, when you check your chain tension, the motorcycle should be on the ground. I've already done that. I already know it's too loose, so I don't need to show you that. But what I'm gonna start with, I'm gonna remove this guard here. You don't necessarily need to do that to adjust the chain itself, but for me at least, it does help me make sure that the rear wheel is aligned properly. So I will remove this, and then we'll go ahead and get into the axle and the adjustment nuts. Okay, so I've got that chain guard off. Again, the chain guard, you don't have to take it off. Just in my case, I like to because it helps me see the alignment of the chain. In my case, since I have these aftermarket rear sets, I actually had to drop the rear set so I could get to this fastener here. That's just for the chain guard, okay? I think with the stock rear sets, you don't need to do that, but just letting you guys know, if you have these Tiger rear sets, you're gonna have to do that. As far as loosening the rear axle nut, pretty straightforward. It's just this guy here, it's a 17, and then on the other side, it's a 22. Okay, so I'm gonna use an impact on it, but if you don't have one, totally fine. You could just use a ratchet as well. So next thing you need to do is you need to loosen this lock nut. That's gonna be this one, that's a 14 millimeter. Before you do that, I like to take a Sharpie felt pen and put a mark where the adjustment is. So I'll show you guys real quick. I have this loose already. So this is how it adjusts. See that? Okay, so when you loosen this lock nut, it's inevitable that this is gonna turn slightly. So what I like to do, I like to put a witness mark all the way across. So that way I know where this adjustment was, so I have a proper starting point, okay? And the adjustment portion of it is 10 millimeters. Again, the lock nut is 14 millimeters. So when checking your chain tension, you should always find the tightest portion of the chain, okay? So all chains are gonna be a little bit different. Chains that are a little bit more worn are more likely to have a tight spot in the chain, but basically what you do is you'll rotate the rear wheel and keep checking the tension as you rotate it, right? So check it, rotate it, okay? Keep checking it. And it's very hard for me to display that on video, but in person, when you're doing it yourself, you'll be able to feel that there's a tight part of the chain, okay, guys? So once you find that tight portion of the chain, you're gonna line that portion up as best you can with this here. Okay, so this part of the swing arm, you want it to line up here. So for example, if it feels like this link is where it's tightest, I want to line it up roughly here. Okay, so don't forget that part's very important. So when actually adjusting the chain, so moving the wheel front to rear, here's where that reference mark we made earlier, I know it's very hard to see on video, but that reference mark we made earlier where we went all the way across from here to here, okay? I know where I started from, right? So what I will do is I'll go to the next reference point. So I have my reference point here on this point of the fastener, and the next point of the fastener will be my next reference point, okay? So what I'll do is I'll go to the next reference point, check the chain. If it's still too loose, I'll go to the next one, okay? If I need something, if now it's too tight, so for example, if I was at this reference point too loose still, and went here and now it's too tight, then what I'll do is I'll just go right in the middle. Okay, it makes it easy for me to tell how far I've actually moved the wheel on each side, because they need to be equal. we'll need to measure we'll need to check the alignment anyway, but it just makes it easier to just go from reference point to reference point. And just FYI, small adjustments here. So just that little bit of a turn, that will actually make a big difference on the chain. So go ahead and make a small adjustment, check the chain, another small adjustment, check the chain until you have it right. And the spec on these, it's supposed to be 5 to 7 millimeters from this point. I know it's hard to see because I have the reverse set is in the way, but it's gonna be from this point here to the chain, okay? And it should be under tension. So again, for this video, the bike it's on a stand, but when you actually check your tension, it should be on the ground, okay? But you're gonna want 5 to 7 millimeters of clearance between this reference point here and the chain. Next, what we'll do is we'll tighten this lock nut. Again, it's a 14 millimeter. I don't know what the torque spec is on it. I've never been able to find it. If somebody knows what it is, please let me know. In the owner's manual that I have, it's not mentioned. So what I do is I always just make it nice and snug. Again, make sure that our adjustment is where we need it to be. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll just kind of keep checking my position of the adjuster. Okay, I need to move back just a little, okay? Then I'll just snug it down kind of like so. Again, if somebody finds that torque spec, I'd appreciate it, but I always just do something like that. Just make it nice and snug, and again, make sure that the adjustment didn't move. So might move just, maybe not, maybe it's okay. If somebody finds that torque spec, the way you could torque it is you could just get a crow's foot, put it on there, and then put your 3/8 drive torque wrench on that. But again, I don't know what the torque spec is on that. On the axle nut, I know this is 66 foot-pounds. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and tighten that down now. 66 foot-pounds on that one. If you've got a caliper, what you can do is you could take 2 reference points, whatever it may be. I don't know, you could take like the end of the swing arm and try to measure that way. I have a chain alignment tool that I'll show you guys in a second, but I know some people like to do it this way. They like to check they like to check the spec on both sides. Again, everybody's different. I'm sure people will disagree with me. It's totally fine, but I don't find using a caliper on this swing arm very effective, just because if you look at how the swing arm's cast, it's just, there's not that many good places to get an accurate measurement. And maybe you could take one from like there or something like that, but I don't think it's gonna be super accurate. So I like using an actual chain adjustment tool, which I'll show you here in a second. So again, instead of trying to take a caliper and measure this, I like using this chain alignment tool. You can get these anywhere. It's just a generic tool. I'm sure some are better than others, but you can get this anywhere. Even on Amazon, they have these. Basically, all they do is they clamp to the sprocket, and it'll show you if the chain is aligned or not. This one, I wish the rod was a little bit longer. It'd probably help kind of highlight any smaller misalignments. But yeah, so basically you just clamp it on the sprocket and it will show you if the chain is aligned. Okay, so that, for me, that's the easiest way for me to figure that out. But again, everybody's different. This is just how I do it. So anyways, let's go ahead and button this up. I'm gonna go ahead and finish torquing everything down, finish double checking everything, and then I'll put the rest together. Here we go, guys. I'll put back together, even with the chain guard. So not too bad, pretty straightforward, but you can mess it up. Just take your time. For me, I constantly check the chain tension as I'm tightening things. So in my experience with these bikes, once you tighten the axle nut, once you tighten the axle, it'll tighten the chain a little bit. So just keep checking it, make sure it's not too tight. I know some people like to either sit on the bike and have somebody check the chain tension again, or have somebody a similar size check the chain tension. That's fine too. All they're doing is they're not checking the spec necessarily. They're just making sure that the chain isn't super tight when they're sitting on it. I don't do that myself, but that is something that some people do, FYI. If that's something that you think would be helpful, then go ahead and do that. But yeah, guys, so there we go, all finished. This is probably gonna be the last chain tensioning adjustment for this particular chain. I'm gonna just go to a different sprocket and go to a different chain. So hopefully I won't have to keep adjusting this thing again. I think I've had to adjust this thing 4 or 5 times in less than 5,000 miles. So You know, as you can see, I'm pretty, I'm not a master motorcycle technician or anything like that, but I'm pretty meticulous about how the chain's adjusted. So I'm not making it too tight or anything like that. It's just, I mean, if anything, I actually leave the spec a little bit loose on the looser side of things. So closer to 7 millimeters as opposed to the 5 millimeters that the factory calls for, right? They call for 5 to 7 millimeters. I'm usually on this more close to the 7 millimeter spec. But I'm pretty detailed about it, so I don't think it's me. I think it is the chain. Others have reported the same, that they're constantly having to adjust the chain on these bikes. But anyways, guys, be on the lookout for that next video with the lightweight sprocket and aftermarket chain. Hopefully it'll be a worthwhile modification. And thank you everybody for joining me. See you guys next time.